Hey, I have started and deleted this intro more times than I'd like to admit because honestly, every version it either sounded too polished or too dramatic, and neither one really felt honest. And so let me just say it straight. We went quiet on here and I'm back. And the reason for both of those things is actually the same. It's just only God, right? So, welcome back to the Kingdom Life Unfiltered. I'm Janeen Marino. I am a wife, mom of five boys, homeschool, world school family, entrepreneur, and someone who's just really committed to talking about faith, family, calling without the filters and all the things that makes it sound easier than it is. Because let's be honest, this faith journey is so if you're new here, welcome. If you found us at the right time, if you've been around since season one, thank you for still being here. I owe you some honesty. So why did we go quiet? So the real answer is, life got heavy and just complicated. And we had just gotten back from traveling. We didn't have Wi-Fi for a while. There was a lot of different things. But really, I found myself, I was like kind of trying to build multiple things at once and just navigating kind of a rebuilding season in our finances and in our daily life and just doing the work of like homeschooling and, raising five boys and settling into a new rhythm, adjusting to that, to like this home base after 3 years of travel. And honestly, like my nervous system was a little shot after just like so much moving so quickly over the last couple of years and just trying to figure out really like what were my, God's assignments for me and which ones were just, you know, ambition dressed up as, ministry or where he wanted me to focus. And I just wasn't sure because, this podcast, as I had shared before, was really an act of obedience. It really was, he told me to start a podcast. And so I did. And I, have had some absolutely incredible guests on here, and it has been such a blast, but it has also been very trying. And especially when we didn't have Wi-Fi in seasons and in different countries and stuff, it has been way clunkier than I had expected, even though he told me to do it messy. And so I did, but honestly, it just got really heavy. I just felt like I needed to put it down. And it's been a couple weeks now that he's been nudging me to pick it back up. And I finally have had, a little bit more time in prayer to figure out like, okay, if you want me to pick it back up, what direction do you want me to go? But I want to just be honest and come on here and say too that sometimes we learn things in that silence and we get to connect with him. And there's a lot of Christian creators out there that just don't talk about this. Sometimes that stepping away from something that you're building publicly can feel a little bit like failure when we need to get quiet. We need to just be faithful. We know that, in order to do things like this, like you want to continue and be consistent. And when God puts something on your heart, you really want to do it well. There is this like low level of guilt that kind of follows you around when you start building something out of obedience and then you get quiet. And one of the things I've learned is God is not impressed by our output. He's really after our obedience. And sometimes obedience does look like stopping so you can hear him clearly again, so you can get the noise out of your head and just come back to a place of peace. And sometimes that does look like, putting something down, even walking away from something that's profitable or taking a step back to build differently, even if that means slower. Even when by your worldly eyes or your bank account may have urgency, God doesn't always work in the same time frames or the same rhythm as the world, right? And so that journey doesn't always feel good. It may feel like failure, but it's in those exact seasons that produce fruit. And that is when God is building, our faith and our trust and, our relationship. And so anyways, in that silence, God did a lot, honestly, but not all in the ways I expected. I thought he would show up and give me some breakthrough wisdom or rebuild all the things and make it all click into place after an extreme season of obedience. Maybe a business plan or like a 5-year roadmap. And instead, I mean, I felt like I thought he was actually going to tell me to put some things down. And instead, I felt like he was really asking me some uncomfortable questions and giving me more inspiration and ideas to move with and really dig into why I was feeling anxious or why I was building, how I was doing things in a way that, maybe didn't line up exactly with the way I felt called to do it because that's not the way that the world says to do it, right? Sometimes we have to do things that don't make sense on paper because that's the way that God is calling us to do. That will give the fruit of leading from overflow instead of pressure, even when it doesn't make sense on paper. Okay. That was something that I really had to dig into what my family needs from me and where I need to be spending my time and what needs to be prioritized and all of that. So in the middle of all that pressure and confusion and really financial stress and stress of rebuilding, and we are super grateful. We have found an incredible community, but getting plopped back into daily life and all the things has also been a little bit of almost reverse culture shock because we're so used to living by like a different clock and a different way of life, traveling full time and, being on mission and being in different time zones and all the things. Coming from that though, something really start to get clarified. And I thought maybe God was going to change up what my calling was or have it shrink down, but it didn't disappear. It just sharpened. And Isaiah 43:19 says, "See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it?" And that word perceive is actually doing a lot of work in that verse because the new thing, it was already happening. I just couldn't see it because I was too focused on like what had stopped. And so that in between time is not wasted. It is prep time. So I'm coming back to this, just as evidence of that. And so let's talk about season 2. So what season 2 is going to look like, we're going to go a little bit deeper. We're going to talk about, some things from scripture that, most of the church has walked right past and really what happened when our family started exploring and learning more about it. We're going to talk about mission, not just like short-term mission trips with cameras, but what it looks like to partner with ministries and different places, really from a spirit-led place, and what it looks like to bring your kids on that journey and what traveling and all of that can do to teach so much character for our kids. We're going to talk about kingdom parenting. We're going to talk about a marketplace ministry and what it means to build a business that's not just profitable and building that kingdom wealth so we can make a bigger impact, which has really always been our heart, but also to make that purposeful and how connecting with others, whether that's in person or over social media, and connecting with other believers and how that can just lead to more kingdom impact in other ways as well. And we're also going to talk about the hard stuff, the valleys, the seasons where, God maybe felt absent or moments where the dream didn't turn out the way we expected in the time frame we thought, or, when we had to like really figure out like what faithfulness looked like when things weren't what we were expecting. We're also going to talk about the praises too, because there are a lot of them. And I don't want to be so focused on keeping it real that I forget to be grateful and also share the incredible things that God has done in our lives. And just, if you've watched a little bit of my testimony, like I've definitely felt called to go a little bit deeper on that and where we have come from and where we are now. I mean, sometimes we look at our lives, kind of like that gap in the gain of you're looking at, okay, I'm going here, right? But we can feel a little stressed when we're thinking about this is where we're headed to. And focusing on that end point and not remembering, but look at how far God has brought us. And that's a huge piece too, to what to do when you're in that valley of waiting on God, because you're going to have seasons like that. We all do. And so we'll be talking about that too. And so this podcast is for the family that actually wants to live the kingdom, not just talk about it. It's for the woman that's building a business who wants it to mean something. It's for the parents who are raising kids and asking God to use those kids. And for the person in the valley who needs someone to say, hey, I've been there and here's what I've found. And so that's who I'm talking to. And I am so glad you're here. So if this episode spoke to you, would you do something for me if you would just share it with one person, not for the algorithm, but for that person, for them, for God to touch them. And for someone in your life who maybe needs to hear that the pause is not the end of the story. Please subscribe wherever you listen so you don't miss out on what is coming. And if you've been around since season 1, please leave a review. It takes just a minute or two, and it matters more than you know. And please don't forget that God is not done in your life, in my life, in this, season, in this, and what we're doing in this podcast. Not even close. He is still rewriting your story. He is not done with you. So I will see you next time.